Hi, everybody, and hope everyone's doing great, as always. And thank you for watching. Please subscribe if you like the content, and if you like it, give it a thumbs up. And as always, thanks for the feedback and commentary and ideas and stuff. In fact, this idea, I wanted to do a quick video. I think this is great. Thank you for the idea, Soul Graphics. Thank you very much for the idea. I was having I wanted to make sure I put this as carefully as possible to make sure I said this right. So the whole idea about the origins of everything. I think it's a fascinating and it's a great starting point to kind of understand existence. So, for example, existence itself is one of those. It's self-evident. It's a self-evident concept, meaning there is something or there is nothing. So there is definitely something. That's a simple fact, versus nothing. And but where did this all come from? How far can we backtrack? So the way that I understand it, and then it's been explained to me and everything through communication. And I've written a lot of this stuff down, just trying to piece it together. So from what I understand and how it was confirmed and described to me by like my spiritual guides and everything, for example, that's a great starting point actually right there. So there is something versus nothing. Now the key question is, when did it all begin? Like how far in time can we go back in order to measure that sort of thing? So awareness and knowledge is what gives us that ability, to conceptualize things like time and to use it methodically in order to be able to map and scribe something, write it down and analyze it and create data and that sort of thing. So that being said, these are key concepts in the ability to backtrack, in other words. So I had asked the question too. So here's where I'm at with the understanding of how things exist fundamentally. So everything has a duality, which is just a basic fact. So if there is dark, there is light. There's a dualistic concept for everything, every concept. That being said, existence itself, the very fundamental nature of what exists, is either physical or non-physical. So using that as a starting point, everything physical has it exists simultaneously non-physically as well. So everything has an exact counterpart existing in the same space. It's just the nature of like the fabric of existence. And that being said, this creates the platform for the beginning of everything. So if you think about it, there can never really truly be nothing, so to speak, because space, if we start in space, so let's say it's just you, imagine yourself, and it's just nothing else. I mean nothing. So everything will be pitch black, and there's simply nothing. So conceptually, space is eternal, because if you think about it, the space in front of you, if you can't move forward, that's because something's stopping you. So what is it exactly that's stopping you? Now we dualistically have the ideas of open space or confined space. So if it's open, we can just travel freely. If you think about it, that makes sense, because you can move forward. Remember, one concept at a time. Everything builds up from one concept at a time. So if there's nothing, there's no light, we see nothing. Nothing means nothing. You're just standing there still. But if you were to move forward in any direction, there will always be space. If something because if you say, well, what if you can't move? Well, then that means that you're closed in. What are you closed in by? And then how far does that boundary exist? And then it either exists eternally until it changes somehow. And then what is that new concept? And what's on the outside of that boundary? In other words, like if you picture yourself even in some sort of three-dimensional, like confined space, and you're unable to move, that boundary exists in every direction, or it's open in every direction. So it's either condensed space, closed space, or open space, lack of density, for example. But either way, whether there's a boundary there stopping you from moving, or whether it's completely open, that literally has to go on forever. Because if it's a boundary, how far does it go? Like 10 feet, 20 feet, 30 feet? What's on the other side of that boundary? So like if there's nothing else, and we're starting basically with that idea of space, it literally is the first concept that defines eternity, which is kind of cool. And that's what the scientists, I think, refer to as the space-time continuum, because space is eternal. Like literally, you can go in any direction forever. Of course, you may run into something, and at which point a new concept comes up. Space stops, and now we hit like a boundary. What is that boundary? Is it solid? Is it dense? What degree of density is it? That sort of thing. But either way, if space is conceptually at the most fundamental level eternal, so is time, because we can go in any direction forever. So the space-time continuum is literally that relationship which defines eternity. It's like the platform for all there is. So that being said, even if there's pure nothing, there's never conceptually or literally nothing, because space is always there. So if there is pure nothing, like in other words, pure nothing is impossible, because there's always space. There's always the space, three-dimensional space to go in every direction. So that right there is something. In other words, space is something. And that gives us the platform for evolution. And that's literally where we come from. So if there's absolutely nothing but space in every direction, that concept of space is a singular concept, but it is something versus nothing. And when you think about it, at some point, let's say there's absolutely nothing, there's a possibility, if you contrast this against the idea of infinite time, infinite space-time, there could forever be nothing, or possibly somehow from this something that we call space, something could gradually start to evolve or manifest. The possibility is there. So there could be absolutely nothing forever. The idea of eternal nothing, void in every direction, is one possibility. The other possibility is eventually, in eternal space-time, something could occur to where the singular concept begins to compound and manifest things and start to evolve, and grow and that sort of thing, which it did over time. Thankfully, otherwise we wouldn't be here. So it's, from what I understand, it's as simple as that. There's no such thing as nothing. Space is something, and that gives us a singular concept to kind of speculate and extrapolate the idea of evolution from. So now this process can happen both in physical space and also spiritual realms, if you will. So this is interesting too. So our bodies, of course, we're physical, but everything has a non-physical counterpart. In fact, that's how those in the afterlife can both perceive and communicate with us and carry us over from one realm to the next. Because now they're interrelated and they can impact each other, non-physicality and physicality. It's possible. In fact, our bodies, like our minds, which are non-physical energy, control okay, sorry, I'm back. I had an issue with my camera. So like, for example, our minds are non-physical energy, and they can command our bodies, for example. Like my mind tells my physical arm, raise your right arm, and it does. So there's a very integrated relationship between the two. So but our minds don't have a physical counterpart. So what's physical has a physical / non-physical duality at all times. But things can exist non-physically that do not have a physical counterpart. So that being said, evolution can also occur in space-time within the realm of non-physical energy. And so, which creates a really interesting question. So, what came first, physical evolution or non-physical evolution? So, I had this conversation with my spiritual guides and asked, can we backtrack using data and that sort of thing to what came first? Remember, this is all speculation too, to a certain degree, because we don't know if like conscious civilization arose and destroyed itself, and then evolution occurred again, a few thousand years later, or that sort of thing. So at a certain point, we can only backtrack to what we know, which is one key reason why life is so sacred and understood, actually, throughout the afterlife, but also on more advanced, intelligent civilizations in the physical universe. And they're out there. But that's why life is so sacred, because the counterpart to all this existing is never existing again. So it's so sacred that, there's a way to preserve and maintain life, especially from the physical realms to the non-physical realms. The alternative is we go back to absolutely nothing, and we're just nothing. And then, it starts over again. So that's why this is such a sacred concept as far as preservation of souls and everything in life, all forms of existence, even rocks and trees and things that, well, trees are living, but, all physical matter. And that's taken very seriously. And so that being said, I had asked, well, can we backtrack to time-wise as far as, was there any spiritual beings or civilization in the non-physical portion of existence, the spiritual realms, that actually was there to witness the birth of physical evolution, at least, this round that we can backtrack to? And the answer was yes, which is really cool. So in other words, the evolution in the spiritual realms occurred a long time ago, before anything physically occurred, that we can track to as well, the beginning points of this known mapped physical universe. So they were around to witness that and see that sort of thing. And it is really old. And as far back, I don't have any numbers quite yet as far as how old it goes back, but old enough to have realized and harnessed and understood the idea of infinity in the spiritual realms, to understand this physical, non-physical duality and how to preserve life and that sort of thing. So there's a very ancient civilization or society, massive to the afterlife, that evolved in the spiritual realms prior to physical evolution starting. So, and they were able to observe this and still do, and that is how they help carry over our souls when we die. So, two groups of evolution are occurring: physical and spiritual. And thankfully, there was someone prior to us to help create this process after physical evolution occurred, to help preserve us once we die and cross over. So I think that's pretty cool in and of itself. And I had asked too, well, how far does this go back? Like, who's the first point of awareness? Is there one person? Is there multiple? Turns out there is one who referred to itself as the most oldest spiritual being throughout all known existence. As far as we know, were the exact words. So, in other words, because, we don't know what came before us and perhaps was annihilated, or, that sort of thing. So, as far as what we've preserved and observed to date, there is one oldest person, and this, which is kind of cool, which is interesting. But remember, it had nothing to do with physical life here. This is not creation, the physical part of reality. But at some point, conscious awareness evolved in the spiritual realms. and then more and more life was created and that sort of thing. That stuff happens over there in a very careful manner. Here it's physical evolution, and we at a certain point we can take over, using science and that sort of thing, creation and affect that sort of thing. But there's no interference from the spiritual realms, is what I'm trying to say. So, but there's one really old person, and the oldest original form of conscious, singular point of conscious awareness that just grew and evolved eventually, and helped establish and create this thriving society in the afterlife. And so that's kind of my understanding of it, and hopefully I explained that clearly. I'm trying to make sure I said that right. So just to kind of summarize, there is, because there's always that question, like what, if there is a God, what came before God, that sort of thing. And that's the answer right there. So speculatively, we can backtrack using information and data and the concept of time to say, okay, at a certain point, there's nothing, and I just remember, like this oldest being I was talking about remembers at a certain point there's just nothing. And then eventually this being became to realize, just like we did over our lifetimes, understand things like data and awareness and things like that, and then start to build knowledge and that sort of thing, and start to map space and track these sorts of things. So in other words, there's a stopping point. You just have to ask, where does the data stop? If it was truly eternal, it would keep on rolling backwards forever. But it can, physical evolution can be mapped and described physically. There was a starting point for what we know to this day. Same with evolution in the spiritual realms, tracking back to one individual conscious being over there. So that's how it was described to me. And that kind of explains the idea of what was there before everything. And that's kind of the story of existence, if you will. So that's, and I haven't got all the details on that yet, but this is what I understand so far as the fundamentals. And hopefully you found it interesting. I sure did. I thought it was pretty cool stuff. And it makes sense conceptually too, if you think about it. So I think that's it. I don't want to ramble on too long, and I think I covered all the key points. So hopefully. So again, thank you for watching. I always appreciate it, and this is great stuff. I appreciate the conversations and the questions and that sort of thing. And these are awesome ideas to kind of chat with people about. I mean, we're here, we're aware, where did we come from and where are we going? So it's all very relevant, and I think it's great stuff to talk about. So I'm grateful for the opportunity to share this, and also for the feedback and ideas and that sort of thing. So thanks once again. Please take care of yourselves, and we'll see you later.